Hello, everybody. It's Rob and Andrew, and we are coming to you live for another show. Hope you can join us, spread the word, share our story that we are on a new platform, America Out Loud, and we just want to get into the groove of things and hope you guys will join us. What do you say, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. We're excited about the new platform. We've got lots of great guests lined up, some shows lined up to air for you guys. We're really looking forward to the new platform. All the great shows at AmericanOutloud.com. Go to iHeartRadio. Just type in America Out Loud. It's super easy. Then you just favorite the channel, and Rob and I will be on every single night at 9 Eastern Time, 8 Central. So, yeah, just a great platform, and we're looking forward to it.
I'm really excited about it. I mean, as I said before, I think we've kicked our butt, we've proven ourselves, and we're upping our game. We want to share our analysis with the folks that are out there that have been watching us. And for the past couple of years or so, we've had some pretty interesting guests and guest hosts on the show to help us with our analysis. And by no means am I would say, an expert in any fields. Although, Andrew, I think you're an expert in the fields that you talk about. You're so passionate about it. But we like to have that dialogue, that conversation, and we like to invite other people to have the conversations with us. And those fields that we're not experts in, we try to bring on experts so that they can dissect and analyze and give you their thoughts on the different topics that we have. Like tonight, we're bringing on a journalist who's been with us before, Heather Robinson, and we always appreciate her viewpoint. We don't always agree on the same thing, but again, that's who we are. We want to bring in different views so that people will see that, we're being fair, accurate, and balanced. So I'm going to pop her in right now. Heather, how's it going?
Great, Rob. Great to see you guys. Hey, Andrew.
Yes. See you. Glad to have you on tonight. We haven't spoken with you in quite a bit.
I know.
So how are things happening? How are things going?
Well, everything's fine. I'm back in New York City, and it's kind of half empty, but it's still here.
right. Still here, still moving along, despite all the crime that's taking place. What are your thoughts about the crimes? When you left it, how did you feel about New York City?
Rob, I have been a New Yorker for over 2 decades, and I am originally a Pittsburgh girl. I've always felt safe here generally. I came in the years that Giuliani was mayor. In fact, my father encouraged me and let me move here because of Giuliani's mayoralty. I remember him saying, there's a new guy in charge. He's really tough. He's got it all under control. And I want my little girl to go take on New York. And so, I was really an example of somebody who, probably would never have come to New York if it hadn't been for, leadership, conservative leadership. I think that it's a wonderful city. I think it's a truly diverse city. I mean, I met you here, and I have a lot of wonderful friends. We don't always agree about politics. We come from different backgrounds, and that's one of the greatest things about the city, I think. I definitely sense that there's been a shift in the quality of life. I think it began before COVID, well before the pandemic, and it relates to leadership, I believe. I think that the mayor and the governor have a hard left constituency to appease. And they have what I view as some bad ideas relating to city management, which isn't to say that everything that Giuliani did was perfect in my eyes, or that there was no need for reform of certain things, perhaps. I think some of what we've seen in the past year has been an eye-opener for me personally. I realized that what was for me a renaissance time in New York maybe wasn't for everybody. Maybe there were some policies that were excessive. The stop and frisk policy is one that I've heard about and learned about, that for, Black men in New York. And I'd be curious about your experience, Rob. Many felt was excessive. But I think that the basic kinds of laws of city management, the broken windows policing that Giuliani instituted, were very, I don't think anybody can argue they weren't effective. He was very brave in taking on a lot of entrenched interests, a lot of bureaucrats and people whose careers revolved around the status quo and keeping everybody on the welfare rolls and keeping people committing all kinds of petty crimes and nothing changing, and lack of investment, lack of families and tourists coming into New York, all that. Giuliani pushed back on all that. And remember how he was demonized. I don't know if you were here then, Rob, but he was so demonized. And he to me, to withstand all that and stick to his agenda and to cultivate allies and forge ahead, I think he did what our President Trump tried to do in a lot of ways. I think in some ways Giuliani was even more successful, and that's leadership. I think being able to take the heat and the criticism and condemnation and still work with others to change things and improve them. So in answer to your question, I think that the deterioration of the city quality of life, unfortunately, had begun with de Blasio's mayoralty. And I had noticed everything from, I mean, not to be gross, but like, you notice little things. It starts with little things. I mean, public urination, I was seeing that even before the pandemic. Bikers, very arrogant, charging through lights, almost running you over, almost running into elderly people. These kinds of quality of life issues I noticed getting out of control even before the pandemic. And I think that it's just accelerated a lot of that. The city's half empty, basically. And when you have a situation like that, you're going to see more of all kinds of, dysfunction, I think.
Right. That's an interesting analysis that you gave. I remember we had on the show a couple of weeks ago, Bill Pepitone, and he was talking about the quality of New York and what had happened. And you look at the different administrations, under the Giuliani administration, then Bloomberg, and now de Blasio. Giuliani, like you said, he took a lot of heat, but he realized that in order to govern a city like New York was like the bad child. The child just did not, this is the way I look at it. The child just did not want to conform, just like, hey, I'm going to do it my way, and that's the only way.
It's a great
analogy. And I think a lot of people felt that way, that New York is untamable. It is New York. It's rough, it's raw, it's gritty. You look at some of the movies that were shot in New York and some of the sitcoms, and it was always the dirty streets, and it was just really raw to its core. And Mayor David Dinkins came in, and I don't even know if he tried to do anything, but whatever it was, he didn't succeed. And then Giuliani came in, this rough and tough, Italian Brooklyn accent guy, and like, hey, I'm going to do this. And a lot of people didn't like him.
Right. But he based what he did on a lot of research,
Right.
As I'm sure you know, Rob, he lost the first time.
Yes.
And he went back and lost to Dinkins, and he studied with all the think tanks, ways to develop, quantify crime patterns, and to actually, and I know there are people who have issues with his, what he did with the police force, but my understanding is it was based on quantifying actual, numbers of arrests, amounts of crime, where was the crime, not all the sort of impressionistic ideas, but it was like, let's actually reduce crime.
Right. And I got to say this, because since we're in this, atmosphere, this environment that we're looking at race and wanting to, set up equality and want to make certain that people are being treated fairly. And I get it, and I understand it, and people should be treated fairly and with equality. But when we just look at the crime, you look at the statistics, look at the numbers. On a proportional level, Blacks make up 13% of the population. Why is it that the crime in the Black neighborhood is at the degree that it's at? Now, we're not saying all Blacks, but if you make up 13% of the population, and these are just rough numbers that I'm throwing out, and of that 13%, 5%, just bad seeds. That's bad. Now, some would say, yeah, but there are more white people than Black people, so white people make up a majority of the crime. That is true. But on a proportionate number, looking at it proportionally, they don't as a race, and I hate bringing race into it, but when you look at the black population, 13% of black population in the United States, and of that, you carve out the numbers that are, always, not following the law or doing things, it does not look good. So Giuliani comes in, like you said, looking at the statistics, analysis, and saying, hey, we can fix this. And a majority of the crime is in black neighborhoods. So we're going to go in and we're going to clean it up, and we're going to put more police out there. People did not like it. They pushed against it, but it worked. And black people were happy that their neighborhoods were once again safe. In Brooklyn, look at Brooklyn. Brooklyn started to prosper. People wanted to move to Brooklyn.
Yeah,
look at the Bronx. Mm-hmm. So there's something to say that when you identify the problem, you see the problem, identify it, and say, hey, let's put the resources to correcting the problem. That's huge. Now, the whole stop and frisk.
What do you think, Rob? Were you, I hate to ask, but I mean,
don't hate to ask. Ask the question. I was never stopped and frisked.
No.
I've never been stopped. I spoke about this the other day when I was at a local store pharmacy, and I walked in, saw the police officer, spoke to him and whatnot, and on my way out, he stopped me, said, excuse me. I didn't turn around thinking, oh my God, he's picking on me. I'm just like, I haven't done anything wrong. We had a nice conversation. Now, I know that there are some who, police have stopped them, and they like, oh, what is he going to do? What's going to happen? There have been some police, I'm sure, that have stopped black men as well as white men, but mainly black men, and were really rough with them for no reason at all. And, which is wrong. That should not happen. Right, but the point that I want to make is the stop and frisk. Giuliani introduced it, but then under Bloomberg, it became excessive, to the degree that, every black person out there, so it seemed, or so I've been heard, was stopped, even if you had on a suit.
So it was more excessive under Bloomberg?
Yes.
You felt than Giuliani? Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Right. That it was more excessive. And that was one of the things that a lot of blacks pushed back on when he decided to run for the president. And he came back, and initially he said, nope, I did what I did. I'm not going to apologize. And then when they started to weigh heavily on him, he came back and said, in hindsight, I think about it, and maybe it should have been done that way. So he went to the black leaders, went to the churches and said, hey, I was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. But yet still, it did keep crime at bay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at that,
was excessive, Rob? Is it, in your opinion, was it excessive, stop and frisk?
Again, I was never affected by it. I heard other people talk about it.
Yeah. Did you law-abiding people felt harassed, black people here in New York? I'm interested in what you've heard. Yeah.
I heard that people said, this is a bit excessive. It shouldn't be happening. But then when I look at it, I'm like, yeah, but in those neighborhoods, that's where the crime is. So they're making certain that they're protecting the neighborhoods. And I think what might have happened is that some of the police took it a little too far. And I think that was a concern. They took it too far. There were complaints and they didn't do anything about it. You had police just like now just going out, just stopping any black kid who was walking out there. Hey, I'm going to stop you. Oh, you look this way. No, that was wrong. And that is excessive if that was happening. Okay. And Bloomberg finally admitted it. They said, yep, we shouldn't have done it. We should have said, hey, step back. But again, you correct the mistake and you move forward. But I don't doubt that had to do with a lot of the success in reducing crime in those neighborhoods, that people enjoyed it. And now enter de Blasio, he and his wife, whom I think are socialist and communist. And I think they use the COVID-19 as, the introduction of them tearing down anything related to the law. They saw it as an introduction to say, hey, now we can, now we have the whole riots that are taking place. We can now push our agenda that the police are bad. Well, if the police are bad, Mr. Mayor, I think you have something to do with it. And if you recall, even before COVID-19, before George Floyd, when de Blasio would go out whenever a cop was shot, the police would turn their backs on him. Now, to me, that's huge, because they're saying we don't have any faith or confidence in you. We don't feel that you have our back. Whereas under Giuliani, it wasn't like that at all. But time after time, whenever de Blasio would go in after police had been shot, they would turn their backs on it. And I'm like, he has got to, work with that relationship. So then going back some more, why would they do that? Well, then you think about Barack Obama. when police were they said the police were shooting blacks, and he spoke disparaging about the police, and he never came out and said, to my knowledge, and if he did, someone please share it with me. He never came out and said, this should not be happening. We need to respect the police. It was almost as if though he took the side of the individuals who said the police had done wrong. Now, under Barack Obama, and I've said this on many occasions, he had two black attorney generals.
Mm-hmm.
Under Barack Obama, there were more blacks. There were more instances whereby blacks and police were having issues. And you would think he would have come out and said, we need to address this. We need to do something about it. I have two black attorney generals, but nothing was done. And in every case whereby the police was made to look guilty that he had killed or, excessive force, the Department of Justice came in, including the Civil Rights Commission came in, and they ruled that, no, the police acted, within their rights. They did what they should have done. But that was quiet as it was kept. So people are completely unaware of it. But again, you can Google it. People can Google this information or go to DuckDuckGo. I don't want you to take my word for it and say, oh, no, those are the talking points. No, those are the facts. His Department of Justice did the investigation. So you got that going on. And then de Blasio comes in and he's, over the largest police union or one of the largest. And the police are saying, we have no confidence in this guy. The police union, they even said, we have no confidence in him. Why isn't he coming out protecting us?
Well, Rob, one thing I wanted to mention real quick, just in terms of what's going on today, the NYPD is everywhere. I kind of am pleasantly surprised. I mean, after all the talk of defund the police and all this craziness, I don't know what to say except that I'm not so sure. I don't know if they feel that they're empowered to do their jobs or not, but there are a lot of big police presence here in Manhattan on the streets. And I definitely, it seems like more minority cops than ever, which I'm glad to see. And, whenever I pass a police officer in New York, I always give him or her the thumbs up, and
Right.
They seem to really appreciate it. But anyway, I'm not sure what more to say about it, except that, my family and my friends have asked me, are you safe? Because I'm walking everywhere. And I do feel pretty safe. The city is somewhat quiet and partly emptied out, but there's a lot of police. So maybe de Blasio, maybe he, despite all his bumbling, and maybe he seems to, for whatever it's worth, feel that a big police visible presence is maybe some of the reason they're so visible is that there aren't as many other people in the city as usual.
Right. I think that's,
you know what I mean? Do you notice
Right.
a lot of police?
well, I do in certain areas, but I will say that they're there, but what are they doing about the crime that's taking place? You look at the attacks on the Asian Americans.
Yeah.
At one point, there were more police that were out there, and I think that there is a concern or a fear that if we intervene, if we do something wrong, we could get sued. And in some instances, look at Letitia James. She filed a report, and she said that during the riots, the police were too aggressive with some of the protesters, and I didn't see that at all. Maybe one or two, but to indict an entire police department and say that they were aggressive to protesters who were clearly breaking the law, who were clearly damaging government property, state property, federal property, clearly damaging private property, and then to say that they were excessive when you had these same rioters who were attacking the police. There was one police officer, one of the commanders, who decided to kneel down with the Black Lives Matter group and Antifa. Only a week later, they cracked his head open. So, yeah, I do see police that are there, but are they there where they should be? And are they afraid to do anything?
Yeah.
Which is really sad. The amount of crime, I'll just add this one thing. After George Floyd, and I'm sorry, before George Floyd, when 2020 entered, and they had the no bail bond, they passed that law. And then they passed the law that if you're arrested, don't arrest people for these little small misdemeanors. Let them go. If they jump the turnstile, let them go. I can understand that. There's no need of getting into a fight with someone who's jumping the turnstile, although they shouldn't be doing it. Public urination, look the other way. So a lot of these things they were saying, look the other way. So once you start looking the other way, and the criminals feel as if though, hey, I'm empowered. I can do this. If I'm arrested, they've got to let me out. I don't have to give them my name, and they've got to let me out. and look at what we have now. When January 2020 came in, the amount of crime that started to take place before COVID was unbelievable. And where was it taking place? In Black neighborhoods. Who were the perpetrators? Black individuals. Yes, there were white people that were committing crime. But again, if we look at this from proportionally, Blacks making up, the percentage of the population, and you're constantly seeing them with making crime. In my opinion, Blacks can obey the law just like any other group. Why do Blacks have to have this preferential treatment, Black or brown people, that they can't? That's an affront right there to say, well, we got to be special with them because we got to let them out. Yes, I realize that in some instances, Blacks were overcharged. I get it. And that was wrong. And that should be corrected. And we had a Black senator, Tim Scott, who wanted to pass a law to correct that. But then we had another senator, a Jamaican senator, Kamala Harris, who shot it down with the filibuster, the same filibuster that they want to get rid of.
Wow.
So when you look at this collectively, and these are things that people are completely unaware of. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, again, Google it for yourself.
I will, Rob. You are
Google it for yourself,
Yeah,
and it's sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad that these things happen because now we're seeing that there's a certain group of the population that can't obey the law. Again, and to be clear, white people commit crimes. They commit more crimes than Black people, but proportionally, when you only make up 13% of the population, and of that 13%, you either have half or a third that are doing things that they shouldn't do, we've got a problem, and we have to address the problem. So again, looking at Giuliani, that's what he did, and he made the city safe. He turned this rough and tough city that they call the Big Apple into a nice apple, and you have families coming here, vacationing, taking their kids to Times Square, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And I saw other people sitting on the sidelines saying, oh, I hate New York City. I don't want to go to Times Square. It's too Disney. It's too this. It's too that. And these were the ultra liberals that had been in New York City for a long time. They enjoyed going out on the streets and being mugged. And I'm like, why would you want something so beautiful? A city like New York. I was proud to tell people I'm from New York City and I can walk around late at night and I feel completely safe and there's nothing that's going to happen to me. I was like, wow, this is like, it felt so great. But now you walk around, you got the stench. I put a piece on Facebook the other day. I'm like, now that they've legalized marijuana, now during the summer, I've got to smell body odor, excrement, dog piss, and marijuana. I mean, come on. How much is a guy supposed to take? But this is what people apparently want. For New York City?
Well, I don't think they want it, Rob. I think that some do, but I was just telling, my friend who's coming here to be with me in a few days that it's like pretty much everybody here. It seems like very few people our age are even here, for one thing. Do you get the sense that it's some old folks who maybe don't have anywhere to go and you see them wandering around the streets? And then there's the young, there's the teens taking over the parks with the skateboards and the weed. A lot of 20-somethings, bless them, who are still here. I don't know if they're working, but they're doing happy hour outside. And there just aren't that many people of middle age in the city now. The taxpayer, the corporate world seems to have gone, And so when you talk about what people want, I think that the sort of higher earning kind of middle years people just seem to have left the city, and for the most part, and it just seems like a city of the young and the old now, kind of. And
well, no. I mean, yes, a lot of people have left the city. Then we also got to take into consideration a lot of people are working from home. And working from home could mean working on the way New York City is set up. We have the suburbs like Long Island. So there's like, well, I don't have to come to the city, or even in Jersey. So they've stopped coming in because a lot of our working population comes from New Jersey and from Connecticut, the tri-state area. Yeah. So you do have that you have that factor that's at play. And then some of the older people were shut in because they were afraid. They've started coming out. But I think overall, aside from that, those are all true things. But I do see a lot of homeless people on the streets. I see, which is very scary because they're dangerous, some of them. And I get the whole thing with mental health. And people like to talk about the mental health. But these are mental health. And to address the mental health issue, what about me and the safety of my health? Why must I go out and be, accosted or attacked. And it's on the subway, they're attacking people. It should not happen. I
Yeah,
am
well,
not sympathetic, but we have to look at the people that are here. And if we want jobs to stay here, if we want people to stay here, all of this has to be cleaned up. And that's what Giuliani did. He cleaned
yeah,
it up. And
he
you have
did.
de Blasio wanting to, well, we want to shut down Rikers Island. And no, okay, if you shut it down, then you should move the homeless there and make living conditions for them there. But just dropping them off in different locations of the city and say, well, we want them to live here, that's dangerous. It is extremely dangerous.
Mental health is a very tough issue, and I must say, it's a horrendously neglected priority, I think, on the part of every politician. I have felt this for decades. I have personal experience, sadly, with this. I know the vast majority of people with mental illness are not dangerous, but some are, and they are all suffering in our streets. It shouldn't be this way, for our sakes or for their sakes.
Right.
Talk about some, misguided liberal policy. I mean, my understanding is that in the 1970s, the mental institutions were emptied because the civil libertarians were pushing for everybody to get out, and instead of improving them and making them more humane places, which was probably what should have happened, just let everybody out who has serious, severe mental illness. And now the standard is so high for involuntary commitment that you have mentally ill people roaming the streets of every major city in this country. And I've thought for many, many, many decades, now that it's inhumane, it's not working. And, it's a neglected priority, very neglected by both parties. And I would see more taxpayer money going toward more humane facilities and better treatment for these people, and, not having them roaming around the streets untreated.
Right, by both parties have neglected, and when they try to address the issue, you're always running into these bureaucrats or these laws that say you can't do this, you can't do that, because it was in the 70s and the 80s when they were institutionalized. In the 70s and the 80s, that civil libertarians coming out saying this is not fair. You got to let these people out if they don't want to take their medication. They shouldn't be forced to take their medication. It's too much medication. Well, here's my take on it. Not being a politician, but just looking at the way our country and our lives have changed, and looking for the betterment of things. If I were a politician and if I were in control, I personally would say we're going to lock them up, make certain that they're treated fairly and comfortably, or we're going to place them on a place like Rikers Island and keep them there. We're going to have someone there to monitor them, because putting these individuals into the general population, when there are issues, it is not a recipe for success. Now, some would say, oh, that's mean and that's cruel. No, what's mean and what's cruel is allowing them to run freely amongst us.
And it should be said that those places in the past, some of them were horrible.
Were horrible, absolutely were horrible.
I do understand the civil libertarian argument to a point, but
but it was horrible, right? The conditions were horrible. You look at some of the, like they said, the sanitaries, right?
I would pay more tax dollars. I swear I would, for an improvement to facilities. I've known and I've loved people who were in state mental hospitals, so I don't say it lightly. I know that it's
absolutely
not something you want to just lock people up and throw away the key. You want these things to be as humane as they can be. And mental illness is a nightmare that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
Right.
But it's the kind of thing that I guess would take a lot of thought and money, and I guess the advocates just haven't been there for the mentally ill. They're either, it's all or nothing. It's like either involuntary commitment to a crummy place or you roam the streets. Right. It's very barbaric.
It's horrible. I have a cousin who suffers from mental illness. She suffered from mental illness all of her life. She's in her 60s now. And we talk just about every day. And she said, this is what sustains me. If I wasn't talking to you, I don't know what would happen. So just listening to her story, and whenever something happens, someone who has mental illness, and she and I will talk about it, and she shares with me, the first thing she'll say is they're not taking their meds, or this is what
Yeah.
should happen. I'm going to try to get her on the show one day, but it's
Yeah.
just her story is so amazing. Here's a woman, and she says, no, we can't function without our medication. She said, I know that a lot of doctors are saying don't take it. She said, but we need to take the medication. She said, like
Yeah.
me, myself. She said, without the medication, I start hearing voices. I know that the voices aren't there, but I
Right.
hear the voices, and the voices help me, having someone to talk to me. And the way it's treated,
Mhm.
she said, I'm not crazy. She said, I have an illness just like a cold. And I'm like, exactly. Earlier on, the way our family looked at it was that, oh, she's crazy, she's this. And as a child, I thought, well, how is she crazy when, she was always nice to me and nice to my brothers and sisters. She had a mental illness. But at that time, people didn't know how to deal with it. But we know so much more about the sickness, the illness than we did then.
Yeah.
So because of that, you would think that the civil libertarians and all the others that are concerned about these individuals would say, okay, let's put them in a comfortable living conditions. Let's make certain that they're taking their meds. And let's not try to pump them on their meds so they're constantly asleep or they're in a comatose state, because that's not fair. But having it on the streets, living like savages, and that's pretty much what's happening. Living like savages, defecating on the streets. I mean, that's no way to live. And we can't say, a civil libertarian can't tell me, well, this is fine. No, it is not fine, because it's inhumane. These individuals should have a place to sleep. Now, some of them feel claustrophobic, so they want to be on the outside. Well, we have to help them. We have to deal with them. We have to address the issue. It has to be addressed.
Yes. Well, I think some of the thinking has been these halfway kinds of houses where they can have a bed and a place to live and supposedly be monitored, but have some freedom. And, in theory, that sounds good. And I think it can work, but I don't know. I mean, there are some of these individuals who we're seeing be violent, in the streets, and it is the minority. Most severely mental ill folks that I see seem scared. They're more timid types. They wouldn't hurt anybody. But I mean, the other thing too is I think some of these assaults, if I'm not mistaken, have been committed by, generally speaking, people who were incarcerated for violent crimes. I mean, I think that some of this is due to the leniency in the courts more than anything. I think that most of the mentally ill, the timid types, who are most of them, are not the ones doing this. It's people who are criminally insane, who've already murdered somebody, who've been behind bars, then they get let out, like that one man who beat that poor Asian woman recently. Killed his own mother. Who's the judge who decided that guy should get out? I mean, some of this stuff isn't so hard. I mean, some of these problems don't strike me as that complicated. Some of it just seems like asinine. Why would why would a convicted murderer of that kind of barbarity ever see the outside again until he's maybe very elderly himself? To me, that's not tough. I mean, that was somebody's major screw up there.
Well, I think with that incident, what happened is that he, from what I have been reading, that he was on lifetime parole, whatever that means. Lifetime parole, he's out of jail, and then he attacks this woman. Now, there is a difference, like you said, between the individuals who are hardened criminals that have been let out of the prison system, be it for COVID or, okay, the mayor just saying, okay, they've been in too long, let them out. To me, that's dangerous. You have some individuals who have mental illness, and they're also, on drugs, as Andrew mentioned in the chat room, they're on drugs. They should be housed, and they should be, housed in a place comfortably, and taken care of and rehabilitated. But then the individuals who are hardened criminals that have been let out of jail because of COVID or because of this no bail bond, whatever that means, let out. I mean, that's dangerous, because now we have criminals that are living amongst us.
And amongst the homeless, the other homeless, they don't belong with them either.
Absolutely not. And at any given point in time, it's like a tinkerbox that could explode on society. The stories that I've heard about these individuals that are attacking Asians.
Yeah.
Now, again, the attacks against Asians have been going on for quite some time.
And Orthodox Jews too, Rob.
And Orthodox Jews, right.
Yeah.
But there is an issue in that community with the Asians and the blacks. And someone sent me I think it was in a text I think it was today, saying that when you look at the Black community, when I first came to New York, I lived in Harlem, and there are just a number of Asian establishments, stores, and uh, Arab stores in the Black neighborhood. Now, why would they go to the Black neighborhood if there wasn't money in those neighborhoods? But they're there and they've been there for quite some time, and yet still the two can't get together and resolve the issues. Well, one reason why is because the community leaders don't want that to happen. It's almost as if though they want to keep this friction going. So now it has exploded and it's on like a larger scale, and people are talking about it, saying what's happening. And not once have anyone come out and said, wait a minute, let's look at the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go into this community and see what exactly is happening. Now, it's easy to say, oh, this is happening because of the COVID virus, because of no, it was happening before then.
Why?
Trust me, it was happening before then.
Do you think it's specific, like who do you think is preaching that hate in the community? Is that what you're saying, that there are
right? We need to get to the root cause of it. It has been happening for quite some time. When I lived in Harlem for I think all of 6 months, I saw it. I was living with a friend who was going to Columbia, and I recognized it. I'm like, why is all this happening?
What did you see exactly? Preaching, you mean? That was
the friction between the two communities, between the Blacks and the Asians, and the Blacks and the Arabs. Like, this makes absolutely no sense, because they both need each other. They're there with the stores and they need the Blacks to patronage the store. But that friction was there. And it's not just New York. You go outside of New York and it's in the same community. You go to Chicago, you will see it. You go to Baltimore, you go to Detroit. In these predominantly Black communities, you will have Asians and you will have the Arabs that are there selling their goods. Why is that? Why does that friction exist? They're both minorities. Why does it exist? And that is the question that needs to be asked and answered. And we can't blame it on, well, because of the China virus. No, it's beyond that. It's deeper than that. And no one is coming up and saying, we need to talk about this. Because once the virus goes away, once we've said, okay, we've got a cure, it will still be going on. Now, yes, we see more of these attacks that are taking place. But again, I submit to you that before all of this was happening in those communities, quiet as it's kept.
And I think also the Orthodox, there were quite a few incidents over the past couple of years, and there, we hear so much from the national politicians about white supremacy groups, hate speech, and I'm not dismissing that. That's serious. That's out there. There are people being preached to hate, but we also have hate preachers in other communities. We have Farrakhan for how many years, and whoever else, and we're living in a climate, as we all know, where we're all told, well, only certain groups can be racist and bigoted, instead of the reality, which is we're all human. Racism, bigotry doesn't have one face. It doesn't have one color.
Exactly.
This is so obvious. Any group can oppress another group. Any individual can oppress another individual. And why is that not being taught in our schools? Why? What about Dr. King's ethics? What about the idea of universal ethics, that we are all human? We are all members of the human race, and you don't demonize someone else of another race, no matter what your race. I mean, these are, I don't mean to sound like I'm on a soapbox, but these simple and profound truths, have we not learned a thing?
So I agree with you. So I would ask you also, within those communities, the Orthodox Jews, why? Because the attacks have been happening.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. Why do you think this is happening and we're not looking at the root cause of? No one is having that dialogue. We've had Dov Heinkind on the show before. We'll try to get him again. Why do you, Heather, think that this is happening?
Rob, I don't know as much about the, internal affairs of New York's Black communities. So, I mean, I can speak generally, that I think that we have a problem in our broader society now, as I just said, where we are all being told that only certain groups can be bigoted. only certain people can be bigoted. Um, you know, as opposed to everyone being held to basic standards of decency and respect. And I think that kids are coming up maybe hearing that they are maybe they're being given license to feel that these other people they have privilege that you don't. You tell that to any human being. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what religion they are. You raise somebody. The irony is, I think that's a sense of entitlement. This idea that, well, I'm the one who's been wronged, so I have the right to make it right by being aggressive with somebody else. I think this is being preached in our universities. Frankly, I think that the hard left in this country has created a very frightening kind of what would you call it? It's propaganda. It's being whipped up. People are being whipped up. They're being told, this group, and that group, this group's the privileged one. And we've seen it a lot through the years. We used to have David Duke and Louis Farrakhan, and these people, the obvious hate mongers. But now it's been co-opted by the universities. In my eyes, I think that a lot of this stuff is borders on the deep irony is its promulgators claim to be so concerned about hate and bigotry, but I think they are promulgating a kind of bigotry. They're saying whatever the groups are, they designate to be, it's like this victimology where if you're at the top of the victim heap, then you get to mete out punishment to people in the other group. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, in terms of this, why these particular individuals may be attacking Asians or Orthodox Jews, or why, there may be personal triggers. There may be things going on in the neighborhoods. I mean, these people, let's face it, probably aren't reading critical race theory. These are people from tough areas, and I can speak to the larger, what I think is pretty upside down and crazy in the larger culture about all this dividing people and packaging it as enlightenment, which I think is coming from the top, coming from intellectuals in our society who are giving people, license, whether you're talking about, being judge, jury, and executioner of any man who's accused of any indiscretion with a woman, or whether you're talking about you get to be, put the person who's got privilege in their place. I think the hard left is preaching this kind of vigilantism in a way. Certainly they're preaching a sense that people in whatever the group that maybe is, whether it's Muslims or blacks or women or whatever, gay people, that this group has license to judge and condemn the other group. It's almost like, to me, it's like taking a group of little kids, like in those old experiments, those social psychology experiments, remember, where they would take the groups of kids and they'd say, today we're gonna be mean to the brown-eyed people because you're the blue-eyed people, and blue-eyed people and brown-eyed people know you're really the good ones. It was really the blue-eyed people that were bad. I mean, to me, that's what this is. It's like a sick, just pitting of people against each other, being packaged as progressive intellectual progress, and I think it's having terrible effects on the whole society.
Right, and as you said, it's coming from the top, the intellectuals, those individuals who deem to have so much education, and they look down on everyone else. They're the ones who are pushing this, so it seems. And you try to address it and say, wait a minute, you're labeled and you're canceled quickly. And then you have others who are completely...
People like us, yeah.
Right, and you have others who are completely unaware, have every good intention, but they don't see it. They don't see how the media is shutting down, and it's so dangerous. I was looking the other day how there was like an interview with, I think, Ron DeSantis about how he was addressing the whole issue with COVID-19 and getting the vaccinations and whatnot. I think it was 60 Minutes. They went in because everyone has been talking about how great of a job he did. He didn't want to close down the state.
Mhm.
And now that we found out that the savior that everyone thought was a savior, Cuomo, was not the savior that he, they made him out to be.
Mhm.
It was a complete disaster and probably killed 15,000 individuals.
Yeah.
And I would just like for someone to go and look at the numbers and just parse it out to see of the 15,000, how many were black, how many were white, how many were men, and how many were women. Because the left, they're so into identity politics. I
Mhm.
would like to know that. But that being said, going back to DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, so you have the 60-minute reporter go to Florida and ask him all these questions. And the way they cut and slice and dice the interview, it made it seem as if though he had done something wrong. But when you
Mhm.
play the entire interview, it was just the opposite. So again, they're controlling the narrative. They
Yeah.
control the narrative during the election. They control the narrative on Hunter Biden, saying that this was Russia disinformation. There was nothing there, only to find out now that he was under investigation and it wasn't Russia disinformation. And they are yet to come out and admit that wrong. I mean, this is dangerous. This is so dangerous that we see these things that are happening. We see the attacks that are taking place on these innocent Asians. We see the attacks that are taking place on other people, but the media will not report on it. So who is the culprit? When you look at this, you look at what Giuliani had done, how he was successful in making this a great city, and who constantly attacked him? The media. And I remember once he said, forget about the media. I don't care what they're going to say. I'm going to do what I've got to do. I'm here to serve the people.
Mhm.
And you look at Bloomberg, he did the same thing. Then in comes de Blasio, who is completely tearing everything down. Now, the media has been critical of him, but not critical enough. Because it's because of him that because of the media that he was elected. You look at Cuomo. Yeah, they're critical of him, but not critical enough. Because
Mhm.
the truth should be out there. People are completely unaware that he's not a good man. But they dressed him up and made it seem as if though he was a savior, that he was saving all these people. And I said on so many occasions on this show that I don't trust him. I don't believe him. And people came back and said, oh, well, you're just mad because Trump, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, I don't trust the guy. Only to find out, now look and see the kind of person that he is.
Yep.
Again, the media, they pick and choose what they want to report because they're the elitist. So we
Yeah.
look at how did we get here? How is all this happening? Because the media has been covering this up.
Yeah.
And if you're not looking at different mediums like we do, looking at different, outlets and trying to connect the dots, you wouldn't know. You would think that, oh no, this person is bad, this person is good. We all have our faults. We all make mistakes. But to the degree that they came in and hid a lot of critical information, it's extremely dangerous. Look at what they're doing in Georgia with the whole election law, saying
Mhm.
that, oh, this is going to affect black people because they can't get an ID. What do you mean they can't get an ID? But they can get an ID to take the vaccine. They can get an ID to prove that they had the vaccine, but when it comes time to vote, they can't get an ID. Or you don't want to give them water or food. And people, oh, they don't want to give black people water or food. You would think that black people are in slavery again. What do you mean they can't get water? They can eat before they come. They can bring their own water. But the way the media, puts this information out there.
Right. And apparently what I heard tonight on Fox is that election workers can give people water in line.
The election workers, but not the people who,
Yeah, they don't
right,
want the activists there like,
right,
hey, have some food, have some water, vote for Biden. They
right,
don't want it to be a bribe. So that's what it's about. Yeah.
right. But these are the things that, and this is the reason why we have this show, so that we can come out here. Again, we don't have all the answers, but we can have these discussions and we can have other people on to have the discussions with us to show people these are the things you need to look at. And as I always say, Google it, look at it for yourself. If I'm wrong about something, definitely present it to me. Let's talk about it. But we can't live in a shell and just believe that CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, Fox News, Newsmax, or One American News, that they are the gospel. Because a lot of times these individuals are putting their own opinions in the news.
Yeah.
And when
And
they
it's
put,
it's like a religion, Rob. You know,
Yeah.
it occurred to me the other day when a friend of mine was getting all upset, and I'll spare you this whole story, but I realized this is her religion. You know, I know that I have certain framework. You know, I'm aware of it. I think along certain lines, I try to also challenge myself and consider things from other sides and experience that cognitive dissonance. And but you know, we as conservatives, we have our, you know, schema. But I think that what the media in this country really has done is just pushed a bunch of just they see everything through a certain lens, and
Right.
it's been reinforced over and over, and people have just swallowed it.
Yeah. Right. So, like I said, I'm glad that we're able to come on and to have these discussions to give people something to think about. Walk away, think about it, do your research to find out, what exactly is happening. Now, normally we would go beyond the hour because this is a great conversation. I've enjoyed speaking with you, Heather, because we haven't had you on in quite some time. And I don't know, we might try to do it tomorrow, depending on the timing and whatnot. But as Andrew said at the top of the hour, definitely catch us on a new platform starting Wednesday on America Out Loud. We'll be on, I think the time slot that we've been given is 9 p.m. Eastern time, which is 8 p.m. Central time, which I think is it 12 noon on the Pacific coast? Well, something like that. But yeah, definitely catch us there because we want to share our stories with you and definitely want you guys to come on and listen to what we have to say and our analysis of things. So before we do shut down and we leave, I just want to share this picture with everyone. I'm sure everyone has their own opinion about it, but I thought, wow, just wow. What exactly was she thinking when she put that on? I mean, that's Dr. Jill Biden. I don't know, fishnet pantyhose and leather jacket. Wow. I'm just wow. That's maybe she and
Well,
Joe, enjoyed
maybe
the
she
night
wanted Joe. Yeah, maybe she was trying to keep Joe alert. You know,
to keep
I
him alert.
I got
Wow.
no criticism of that. I mean, I don't
Oh no,
listen.
nope,
I don't like
not
them,
at all.
but if whatever keeps them, functioning and in the game.
Functioning and in the game. I like that. And grandmas aren't the grandmas from the 80s or the 70s or the 60s. Grandmas now, they get down. What can I say? But that's all we have for tonight. Thank you, Heather, for coming on with us.
Thank you,
Like I said,
guys.
if we come on tomorrow, we'll definitely let you all know. But thank you for supporting us. And Andrew, you want to close us out?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone who tuned in. Be sure to join us Wednesday night on America Out Loud on iHeart Radio. We will be on at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 6 in the West. So please join us then. We will see you guys then. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Be blessed. Be safe.